Pisces, if lately you've felt like your life is quietly shifting direction, even though on the surface everything still looks familiar, you're not imagining it. Some changes don't arrive with noise. They don't need clear signs. They don't knock on the door through dramatic events. They arrive softly, like the tide turning while you're asleep, so that by the next morning, nothing is standing exactly where it used to be. You may have noticed it in very small moments, waking up one morning and realizing you no longer want to keep going with something that once felt normal, standing in a place you used to call safe, yet feeling that your heart is no longer there. Or maybe it's just a passing thought, light as air, but it keeps returning, again and again, until you can no longer ignore it. Pisces is deeply intuitive, but also deeply self-doubting. You often ask yourself whether this is just a temporary feeling or simply exhaustion passing through. But some signals don't come to test you. They come to guide you. What makes this time different is that the shift is no longer staying inside your inner world. It's beginning to step outward, touching real life. It might be a casual conversation that suddenly opens a new perspective. It might be an opportunity that doesn't arrive when you expected, but arrives exactly when you needed it. Or it could be a decision you've postponed for a very long time that no longer feels as frightening as it once did. You're no longer thinking in terms of what if. You're starting to wonder what might happen if you allow yourself to move forward. The current of life right now is not rushing you, but it is steady. It doesn't ask whether you're ready. It gently places you into situations that require you to listen to yourself more deeply. Pisces, you may not be able to see the entire road ahead. And the truth is, you don't need to. Some journeys aren't meant to be controlled step by step. They're meant to teach you how to trust that every step, even through the fog, is leading you away from a version of yourself that has been tired for far too long, that has been holding it all together for too many years. Perhaps you've grown used to enduring in silence, used to placing other people's emotions first, used to telling yourself you're fine, even when inside you've been quietly shaking. But this shift didn't arrive so you could continue sacrificing yourself. It arrived to remind you that you too deserve a lighter space, a rhythm of life that actually matches the rhythm of your own heart. And strangely enough, when you begin to accept that truth, you realize you're not as alone as you once believed. Life begins to respond, not with promises, but with small pieces, just enough to help you keep walking. If you're feeling both excited and anxious, that's completely natural. Every real change carries both emotions at the same time. But remember this is not an impulsive turn. This is the result of countless moments when you tried, when you endured, when you learned how to stand back up from places no one ever saw. What's happening now isn't here to take anything away from you. It's here to return you to a more honest, more complete version of yourself. And as you continue listening to these quiet movements, you'll begin to notice other signals slowly appearing, as if life is preparing to whisper something even more important, a confirmation you don't need to chase, because it's already on its way to you, very close, very real, and carrying with it the sense of calm you've been waiting for a very long time. There are moments in life, Pisces, that arrive without any warning. They don't come with loud announcements. They don't give you time to prepare yourself. They appear right when you've just let go of an old worry, right when you've stopped asking whether you've been hoping for too much. And then, in a moment that feels very ordinary, very simple, a signal reaches you. It might be the sound of your phone ringing in the middle of a quiet afternoon. It might be a familiar name showing up where you never expected it to. Or it could be just a few simple words, spoken softly, yet carrying enough weight to make your heart sink with emotion. What's striking is how quickly it all happens. So quickly that you don't even have time to put up your usual defenses. So quickly that the questions that once repeated endlessly in your mind suddenly have nowhere left to live. Pisces spent a long time trying to convince yourself to be patient a little longer, telling yourself it wasn't time yet, telling yourself you might be hoping too soon. But when that signal arrives, you realize there are things you don't have to force yourself to believe, because they arrive carrying clarity within them. There is a moment of deep silence inside you, not shock, not overwhelming joy, just a feeling of lightness, like setting down a bag you've been carrying on your shoulder for far too long without realizing how heavy it really was. The quiet worry that once rooted itself inside you, that made you cautious about your own desires, begins to dissolve. Not because you push it away, but because it no longer has a reason to stay. You may notice yourself breathing a little deeper. Your heartbeat slows. Thoughts that once spun endlessly suddenly come to rest in a place that feels calm. For the first time in a long while, Pisces no longer feels the need to imagine the worst-case scenario just to protect yourself. You allow yourself to believe that this good thing isn't random. It isn't pity from life. It's the result of all the times you didn't give up, even when no one was watching. You might smile quietly to yourself, or you might go still for a moment, as if you need a few extra breaths for your emotions to catch up with reality. But whatever your reaction is, deep inside, a clear confirmation is forming that what you've been quietly hoping for, what you kept to yourself because you were afraid speaking it out loud might make it disappear, has finally found its way to you, not loudly, not dramatically, just close enough for you to reach out and touch, and real enough that you no longer doubt yourself. As that sense of relief spreads, you begin to notice something else. Not every door that opens is meant to overwhelm you. Some doors open just enough to let the light in gently, just enough to give you time to get used to the feeling of being trusted, being welcomed, standing exactly where you belong. Pisces no longer asks whether you are worthy. The answer is already there, resting quietly in the calm now flowing through your chest. And as you continue forward with this newly found trust, the world around you seems to adjust its rhythm. The details that once distracted you begin to fade into the background. What truly matters comes into clearer focus, as if life itself is quietly clearing the path ahead, not asking you to rush, only asking you to stay present long enough to sense that new movements are already forming, more subtle, more profound, and strong enough to carry you farther than you ever believed you could reach. And then, as the light begins to touch you in such a gentle way, something else slowly comes into view, not through confrontation, not through conflict, but through feelings that are deeply familiar, a passing glance, a sentence that sounds caring, advice wrapped in softness, subtle enough to slow you down if you were still the Pisces you used to be. There are people who don't openly oppose your growth. They don't say you're wrong. They don't stop you with harsh words. Instead, they remind you of the things that once made you hesitate. They bring up the risks. They talk about stability, about what's familiar, about the sense of safety you held onto for a very long time. Everything sounds reasonable. Everything sounds like it comes from concern. But beneath it all, there is a very clear desire to keep you where you are, in the place where your change doesn't disturb their world. Pisces has always been sensitive to this kind of energy. You once softened easily around other people's emotions. You once wondered whether your steps forward might hurt someone else. But this time, that feeling doesn't carry the same weight. You listen, but you don't let it sink into you. You begin to understand that gentleness does not always equal truth, and care, when it requires you to shrink yourself, is no longer something you need to carry with you. There is a very quiet moment inside you when you realize you don't need to explain. You don't need to persuade. You don't need to prove that your decision is the right one. You only need to stand steady in what you feel. And strangely enough, that brings you a different kind of strength. Not loud, not rigid, just a quiet certainty, strong. Enough to keep you from being pulled backward by words that seem harmless on the surface. You begin to see your boundaries clearly, not through coldness, but through awareness. You understand that some connections only survive when you stay still, and when you change, imbalance is inevitable. But that is not your fault. It's simply a sign that you've already traveled beyond the place where others were used to seeing you. This time, Pisces does not turn back. Not because you become harder, but because you're exhausted from betraying your own feelings. You know exactly how painful it is to stay in a place that no longer fits who you are. And you also know that if you hesitate now, you risk losing what has just begun to glow inside you. That rare sense of calm you've been waiting for such a long time. You move forward slowly, but without hesitation. not to abandon anyone, but to keep yourself. And in the moment you choose not to look back, a deep sense of relief moves through you, as if an invisible cord has finally been released, allowing you to breathe more easily, to walk more steadily, and to see the road ahead just a little more clearly. And as that steadiness begins to take shape, you realize that other things are quietly closing as well. No announcements, no dramatic endings, just the feeling that a chapter has completed its purpose. And as you continue walking with this new sense of calm, the space around you begins to shift in a very subtle way, as if life itself is preparing a new breath for you, a place where what drains you naturally falls away, making room for the softness you deserve to live with. And in that quiet space, Pisces begins to recognize a truth that feels both gentle and unmistakably clear. Some things have stayed with you for far too long, not because they still fit, but because you've grown used to carrying them. A space, a relationship, a way of living that once helped you survive difficult seasons, but over time, slowly became a place that drained your energy without you even noticing. You didn't realize it right away. You only noticed that you felt a little more tired each day, a little quieter, and more often than not, you found yourself wondering why joy had begun to feel like a luxury. Pisces has always been very good at enduring. You can stay in situations that no longer nourish you simply because you don't want to disappoint anyone. You don't want to cause disruption. You don't want to be the one who leaves first. But deep inside, your body has been speaking for a long time. Evenings started to feel heavier. Mornings no longer carried anticipation. Your heart kept beating steadily, yet no longer felt truly heard. And then, in a very quiet moment, you understood that you could not keep living this way. The ending you're moving toward doesn't look like a tragedy. It doesn't require long goodbyes. It doesn't need tense conversations or loud tears. It happens quietly, like setting down a jacket that has worn thin at the shoulders. Not because you hate it, but because it no longer fits who you are now. There may be a brief sense of nostalgia. There may be a moment when you wonder whether you're being too cold. But that feeling passes quickly, making space for a relief you haven't felt in a very long time. When this draining chapter closes, you don't immediately feel happy. Instead, you feel calm. A calm that is deep and real, as if the inner space within you has finally been cleared enough for light to enter. You begin to hear your own voice again, no longer drowned out by other people's expectations or the pressure to be a more acceptable version of yourself. You breathe more slowly. You see things more clearly. And most importantly, you no longer have to brace yourself just to exist. A new door opens shortly after, but it isn't dramatic. It doesn't ask you to become someone else in order to step through. It opens just enough to make you feel safe as you move forward. It's a place where you don't have to explain why you're sensitive, where you're not forced to be stronger than your true nature. There, you're allowed to live at your own rhythm, allowed to slow down, allowed to feel deeply, allowed to trust that gentleness itself is a rare and powerful form of strength. Pisces begins to understand that leaving a draining phase is not selfish. It's an act of self-respect. When you choose to walk away, you're not taking anything from anyone. You're simply giving yourself back the right to live in a space that doesn't empty you. And in doing so, you quietly give others a different kind of opportunity. The chance to face themselves instead of leaning on your silent sacrifice. You may be surprised to realize that you don't have to struggle much to adapt to what's new, because what's new didn't come to test you, it came to welcome you. Things begin to feel lighter, decisions no longer feel as heavy. Choices no longer keep you awake at night. You slowly begin to believe that you deserve a life that doesn't require constant defense. And within that lightness, another feeling begins to grow. The sense that you're not just closing an old door, but preparing to step into a space where balance starts to return. Not by immediately changing the world around you, but by changing how you show up within it. You become more honest with yourself, less willing to compromise with what hurts you. And when you stand firmly in that honesty, life seems to respond in a very subtle way, opening connections, opportunities, and values that have been quietly waiting for you to notice. And then you realize that the movements unfolding don't stop with you alone. There is a thread, very thin, very deep, connecting you to another person, someone you don't need to name, yet they appear clearly in your heart. Someone who, when they feel tired, you feel the weight too. Someone who, when they stay silent for too long, causes the space around you to grow heavy. Pisces has always sensed these things, even when nothing is spoken out loud. That person has been carrying pressures far longer than what they allow others to see. They may always try to appear fine. They may be used to carrying responsibility, used to being strong, used to standing firm for everyone else. But some exhaustion can't be hidden forever. It settles in their eyes, in the way their voice grows quieter when night falls. In the silences, they no longer have the strength to fill with familiar smiles. You noticed it long ago, even if you never said it aloud. There may have been moments when you wondered why you feel so deeply tied to another person's journey, why their joy or sorrow affects your emotions so strongly. But the truth is, when you love someone deeply enough, you don't just walk beside them. You quietly share the weight with them. Pisces has never asked for much in connections like this. You only hope they could feel lighter, breathe more easily, live closer to who they truly are. And then, when the turning point arrives, you sense the change almost immediately, not through formal announcements, not through grand explanations, but through a subtle shift in the air around you. They begin to breathe more deeply. Their eyes light up in a way you haven't seen in a long time. The tension slowly leaves their shoulders, as if an invisible burden has finally been set down. You don't need the details. Being close is enough to understand that something truly important has just been released. That moment touches you in a very different way, not loudly, not dramatically, but enough to soften your heart. Because when the person you love is freed from pressures that have worn them down for so long, you are freed as well from the quiet worry you've been carrying all this time. Some connections are like that, where another person's peace becomes the greatest gift you could receive. And Pisces, you are standing inside a moment just like this. You begin to realize that you don't need to save anyone. You were never meant to hold everything together alone. Simply being there, present with sincerity and deep compassion, is enough. When they regain their balance, the bond between you becomes lighter, clearer. No longer a compensation for lack, but a companionship between two people slowly standing on their own feet. You may notice yourself smiling more often in very small moments. An ordinary conversation suddenly feels warmer. A quiet evening no longer carries heaviness. You no longer need to guess what they are enduring because their calm speaks for itself. And within that calm, you allow yourself to relax, to stop worrying so far ahead, to believe that good things can exist for both of you at the same time. Pisces begins to understand that your own change has created ripples far beyond what you imagined. When you choose not to stay in what drains you, you quietly open a new path for those connected to you, not through advice, not through sacrifice, but through the way you live more truthfully with yourself. And in a deeply human way, that gives others the courage to step beyond the limits that once held them. In that quiet moment, you feel grateful, not because everything is perfect, but because balance is finally beginning to return. You no longer carry the weight for two people. You move forward with a lighter heart, with a trust that when one person is healed, those around them are touched by that light as well. And as you continue walking within this sense of calm, something very natural waits ahead, like a gentle whisper, reminding you that what you're approaching is not just the end of an old journey, but the opening of a new rhythm of life. A rhythm where you are finally allowed to receive more than you ever dared to hope for. And as all of those movements slowly settle, Pisces realizes you're standing in a very different place than you were before. Not because life has suddenly become perfect, but because you're no longer carrying burdens that were never truly yours. That sense of lightness doesn't arrive all at once. It spreads gradually, seeping into small habits, into everyday thoughts, into each breath you once barely noticed. You begin waking up without the feeling that you have to brace yourself just to face the day. You move through life without the quiet fear that if you pause for even a moment, everything might fall apart. Your inner state stabilizes in a very natural way, not as temporary excitement, but as a steady foundation built from within. You know where you are. You know what you want. And more importantly, you know what no longer belongs in your life. This clarity doesn't make you rigid. On the contrary, it brings a new kind of softness, like water that is no longer disturbed, calm enough to reflect the light. Pisces no longer needs to constantly adjust yourself to fit the world around you. You allow the world to adjust its rhythm as it enters your space. And within that stability, the currents begin to return, not loudly, not in a rush. Opportunities arrive in ordinary, reasonable ways, as if they've been waiting to appear the moment you are truly ready. Money, work, connections that carry real value no longer make you tense or doubtful. You don't have to chase them. They come to you when you're no longer living from a place of inner lack. Joy works the same way. It doesn't come from grand events, but from the feeling of living in alignment with yourself each day. Pisces begins to understand that you no longer need to fight. Life is not always a battlefield that demands victory or defeat. There are seasons where all you need to do is allow yourself to receive support, to receive good things, to receive the gentleness you once believed you didn't deserve. You've been through enough to know you no longer have to prove anything to anyone. Your existence, your depth of feeling, and your willingness to keep moving forward are already immense values. The greatest difference this time is that you no longer feel alone on your path. Whether it's the presence of someone walking beside you, or simply the feeling of being supported by life itself, you know you're no longer carrying everything on your own. There is companionship. There is sharing. There are hands ready to hold you when you're tired, without asking you to be stronger than your true nature. And because of that, the road ahead feels far less uneven. Pisces, closing an old cycle doesn't mean forgetting what once was. It simply means you've learned the lessons you needed to learn. You've paid what needed to be paid. And now you're allowed to step into a different rhythm of life. A rhythm where peace is no longer a luxury, where joy doesn't require a dramatic reason, where you can trust that good things don't arrive to test you, but to stay. As you continue forward from here, carry with you the gentleness you've learned to offer yourself. Remember, you don't need to rush. You don't need to compare. You don't need to become anyone other than who you already are. The greatest gift this journey brings isn't only found in what you receive externally, but in the fact that you've become a version of yourself calm enough to receive. And within that calm, there is a very soft whisper from life, telling you that you are on the right path, that what lies ahead will continue to open, slowly, kindly, and fully, in a way meant just for you.